Hello everybody, thank you so much for joining us here in LiveFit Kitchen. We are joined once again by Dr. Purcell.
Hello everyone, it's great to be back.
It's great to have you back.
Thank you, Alicia.
We have some great recipes. Now we're continuing the holiday theme. We know we're all going to a lot of parties this season and we want to have some healthy choices to take with us or if we're hosting at home. So here we are with crispy kale chips. Tell us about the recipe.
And so it's a very simple recipe and really delicious, Alicia found out today.
It is.
We're going to use 12 ounces of curly kale,
which is a lot of kale.
And it's about how many bunches?
It was about 1.5 bunches.
Okay. 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, 1 tablespoon of fresh lemon juice, and sea salt to taste.
Or truffle salt, apparently, which I didn't have at home, so I went with the sea salt. Now, here's the thing about kale. I've never liked kale, ever, once, in any recipe, ever. So I have to say, when I was putting this one together, I was, preparing it at home first to try it out, and I was just thinking, you know what? I don't think so. And I made the first trial batch, and I'm like, oh, I guess I'll taste it. It was delicious. So if you are not a lover of kale, prepare to be very surprised, because this actually is really good. So here's what we did. I used a combination of purple kale and green kale. With the purple kale, I cut off the bottom stem, sort of up to where the main leaves really start, and I actually just used kitchen scissors. So I cut the stems off, and then the recipe calls for cutting the kale into about 4 pieces. Now this is a pretty small piece, so this size I cut into 3, and literally, again, just with the kitchen scissors, just cutting it into thirds. Bits did go everywhere at my house too. The puppy was thrilled. With the larger pieces, cut off the thickest part of the stem right at the bottom there, and then I was cutting those approximately into 4ths. You'll have some really uneven, different size pieces. Maybe that piece is a little big, so you might cut that one in half this way.
And while Alicia's cutting the kale, I just want to talk to you about the nutritional properties of kale. I know she mentioned that she wasn't too excited about it, and many people are scared of kale because it's such a coarse-leafed vegetable, and sometimes when you chew it, you really feel like it's rabbit food. But kale is super nutritious, and the reason why this recipe is so successful, as you see, is what we do to marinate and prepare the kale before we bake it. Now, kale is a member of the cruciferous vegetable family, and researchers have now identified 45 different phytochemicals in kale, which means that it's an uber vegetable. And there are 5 types of cancer that kale has shown to be protective against, specifically colon, breast, prostate, bladder, and ovarian cancers.
Well, aren't we lucky that I found a way to actually enjoy kale and start to include it in my life? Because up until this point, not so much.
And you just might enjoy it too at the end of this recipe.
Yeah, seriously, if you don't love kale, try this one anyway. This is very surprising how good this really is. Okay, so you can see as Dr. Purcell was talking, I was just cutting the kale into rough pieces. This bowl here is quite large, as you can see, and is not even half full with the kale that we had. When I did the 12 ounces of kale, I filled this bowl twice over, and it was fairly mountainous. So what I did was I cut it up into the bowl just for somewhere to keep it, and then I pulled it back out of the bowl so that I could use the bowl to mix the rest of our ingredients. Now, because it's such a mountainous quantity, and even though the bowl's large, it's not, it's not this big, what I actually did was I split the ingredients in half. So I used 1 tablespoon of the olive oil and half a tablespoon of the lemon juice. Put it in this bowl. I used a fork. I whisked it up just so that it combined nicely. And then I put half of the kale in. Now, when I put the kale in, I whisked everything, I put it in, and then I really just used my hands to toss it around because you want to get a nice even coat. Yeah. And you said something about that releasing nutrients. What was that about?
Right, because the kale is such a coarser vegetable, it's filled with all these special phytochemicals and minerals that are stuck or bound in the leaves. And so when we add the lemon juice and the olive oil and the sea salt, it allows the membranes to break down and it liberates those special phytochemicals so we can absorb them.
And apparently some better flavors. So next, what I did after I had this nicely coated, and I just tossed it, maybe a half a dozen times around in the bowl. When I put it on the cookie sheet, I needed to make sure that I had just one nice layer, that it wasn't sort of doubled up or piled up too much. So for 12 ounces of kale, it was about 4 cookie sheets worth. I did try one on a wire rack, and that was not successful. It cooked too quickly, and I'm a novice chef, and I didn't think to check on it halfway through. So the wire rack one might have worked great if I'd only cooked it for 5 minutes. But yeah, 10, 15 minutes was definitely too long. So once I got it onto the cookie sheet, I used my sea salt grinder, and I just ground just a nice little layer of salt over it, just a little bit, and that was it. Into the oven at 350. I pulled them out after 15 minutes. Most of them were done, and they were really quite crispy and crunchy. There were just a few that were still a little soft. So I basically just did a quick little test, pulled the done ones off, and put the others back in, really just for another 3 minutes. It really does cook very quickly. Now, what we learned, this is how they come out. You can see that the purple ones have more of a browny purple tinge. The green ones stay quite green. They look very festive, and they really are best straight out of the oven. So these ones were stored in plastic for a half an hour on the drive over here to the studio. Some of them came out a little soft.
Not a good idea to put them in plastic.
Yeah, really the Tupperware was a very bad choice. So now I know some of them are still crisp, some not so much. The one on top is crisp if you want to check my cooking.
And I will try it.
But I think if you're going to serve these, serve them either straight from the oven or just leave them on an open container, you know, just on a tray or something in the kitchen. But didn't that turn out great?
Very nice.
I'm amazed. Seriously, I have been converted to really enjoying kale, at least in this form. Try it out. I promise you'll like it.